there was like a trap door that opened up into a totally different experience. And specifically what happened is a portal opened up on my wall, and I walked through this portal into a place I call the Maze of Souls. It was like corridors is the best way to think of it. Corridors with portals on either side. So hallways, they would bend in every direction. Sometimes they slanted upwards. Sometimes they went in circles. Just endless corridors with all these portals. And every time I jumped through a portal, most of the time I'd end up back in the Maze of Souls in another corridor. And it was just endless wandering. I can tell you the first time, it was terrifying. I had never experienced anything like this. It was horrific. It was scary. I didn't know what was going on. It was nothing like LSD. It was nothing like any drug I had ever taken. I was hyper aware, hyper alert. And it turned out sometimes when you go through one of these doors, there is a room on the other side. And sometimes in these rooms, you would encounter beings, and these beings would communicate with you and share things with you. And one of these beings that I encountered the very first time was known as Five.
All this and more coming up on this episode of the TruthSeekah Podcast. Really quick, before we get started, if you are blessed by this ministry, if you're blessed by this platform, anything that I bring to the table, I ask you to partner with me via Patreon. Go to patreon.com/TruthSeekah and you unlock rewards, my entire discography of music, webinars, meditations, weekly hangouts, and so much more. Patreon.com/TruthSeekah. Go check it out.
Won't you come and take me away? I just wanna be with you. Won't you come and take me away? To a place to walk on troubled seas, faith to stand when I don't believe. I just wanna be with you. Won't you come and take me away? I just wanna be with you. Won't you come?
You are now locked into the TruthSeekah Podcast.
Gargoyles, psychics, everything's ungodly. Dark savage.
Streaming live at TruthSeekah.com.
She's not a Christian.
Give it up, y'all.
Your portal to the paranormal, esoteric, and all things spiritual.
She's tampering in dark-sided stuff.
And now, your host, TruthSeekah.
This was an amazing episode. You guys are going to enjoy this one. We go deep into talking about extraterrestrials, the intelligence, how they communicate with each other, with you as an individual, and how they're communicating with the collective. I think this episode is important because of all of the things that are being released right now in the mainstream media who are trying to get ahead of the narrative. And so they want us to look at little green men. And I'm here to tell you that the conversation is much bigger, literally larger than a little green man controlling a spacecraft. Buckle up, you're gonna enjoy this episode. But before we get started, I wanna let everybody know that I just released a new album, a 4-song EP entitled Unspeakable, produced solely by my good friend Zen J Beats. You guys are gonna love this one. It is an album where I was able to open up to get a little bit more vulnerable. I describe it as a worship album because a lot of the songs are directed towards God, towards Christ, about my relationship, but also call it dark worship because I'm getting pretty vulnerable and talking about things that you might not hear on a Sunday morning worship song. But what is worship if it isn't dark, if it isn't your prayers and thoughts from the very thread and very fiber of your being? And that's what this album is. It allowed me to address a lot of deep subjects, and I'm so excited. It took me a long time to put it out, but it is out now. Go run those numbers up, go listen to them. Another huge announcement, because people have been asking when is the next retreat. And so we do have a date, and we do have tickets available. I will say that it's already getting scarce. I honestly think there's only 4 tickets left, 5 tickets left. I don't know. Go check it out at TruthSeekah.com. All the info is there. December the 2nd, we have a cacao ceremony. We do breath work, and I reserve myself to go really deep for these events personally. That's why they started, for myself going out to try to get to another level, to go lay some things down in nature, to reset, refresh, and to renew, and to pick up some things of beauty. So that's what it's been, and I've been doing these for several years now, and each and every one has been unique and amazing, and I'm learning to tweak what do we do, how do we do it, and even where to look, because we're all being taught at these retreats as well. So fun. We do the CE5 initiative, go out under the night sky with night vision goggles and laser pointers and meditate and ask for the angels to show up, and usually we see them in one form or another. Yes, they have many forms, but if you're interested in this, it's in Mobile, Alabama, December the 2nd. Go to my website, TruthSeekah.com. It'll be awesome. Can't wait to give you a big hug. Go check it out. Today, my guest is Ogi Ogas. Brother, welcome.
Yes.
To the podcast, man. Did I pronounce the name right?
Ogi Ogas.
Oh,
The long O.
I always find a way to mess up names.
Oh, no worries, Truth.
So, man,
I am
excited
delighted
to have you on.
to be here. Oh yeah, I'm so happy that you invited me on your show. I've got some extraordinary stuff to talk about with your audience today.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. Be fun. You've been doing a lot of podcasts recently?
Nope. I just started last week, so this is really the first time I'm talking about this stuff. In fact, this is going to be the very first time I'm doing a whole show on it with someone. So lucky for you and lucky for your audience. Maybe I could just talk a little bit about myself, introduce myself.
That's a great place to start, brother.
Great. My name is Ogi Ogas, and I'm a mathematical neuroscientist. I got kicked out of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology for talking to intellects, for talking to intelligent extraterrestrials. I got kicked out of MIT for talking to aliens. And I never stopped talking to those aliens for more than 30 years now. And during this time, they have been sharing math with me and science with me. And the math and science that they've been sharing with me has allowed me to do some extraordinary things. For example, I figured out the mathematics of consciousness, how we are aware, the mathematics of self-consciousness, the mathematics of language. How does our mind produce words and meanings? How do we understand the meaning of words? How do we feel things? We learned about the math that explains how we feel. Even autism. So I've got autism myself. I'm autistic. Doing podcasts is actually quite hard for me. Talking to people is very difficult. I spent many, many years trying to figure out how in the brain autism works, and with the help of Intex, they shared the math that helped me understand that and helped me overcome a great deal of my autism as well. So I would love to share and talk about any of this stuff today on your show.
I mean, I love the way this works. You know, a lot of times people will send over questions to ask. There's like, here's a list of 10 questions, stick to the questions. I'm like, I don't really do that, you know. I like to have a free flow conversation, and it usually brings out the best. I have this way of extracting information because in that opening statement, you know, there's so many questions already. But so how did it start? How did it start this, or at least when did you become aware that you were in contact? We'll say that.
So when I was at MIT as a sophomore, I took LSD, and like a lot of people who take LSD, I had an experience, but I had taken LSD several times before. So this wasn't the first time by any means. And also I had taken larger quantities before. This was just a small quantity. I had done it many times. I did lots of drugs. And in the middle of the LSD experience, there was like a trap door that opened up into a totally different experience. And specifically what happened is a portal opened up on my wall, and I walked through this portal into a place I call the Maze of Souls. It was like corridors is the best way to think of it. Corridors with portals on either side. So hallways, they would bend in every direction. Sometimes they slanted upwards. Sometimes they went in circles, just endless corridors with all these portals. And every time I jumped through a portal, most of the time I'd end up back in the Maze of Souls in another corridor. And it was just endless wandering. I can tell you the first time, it was terrifying. I had never experienced anything like this. It was horrific. It was scary. I didn't know what was going on. It was nothing like LSD. It was nothing like any drug I had ever taken. It was I was hyper aware, hyper alert. And it turned out sometimes when you go through one of these doors, there is a room on the other side. And sometimes in these rooms, you would encounter beings, and these beings would communicate with you and share things with you. And one of these beings that I encountered the very first time was known as Five. So this was a form of extraterrestrial intelligence. It calls itself Five, and I met it in a room in the Maze of Souls. Now, here's the thing. Here's a general piece of advice for anyone who is ever trying to talk to supernatural beings or extraterrestrials. You can always negotiate with purpose. If it is a mind, if it has a mind that has goals, if it has purpose, whether it's a bacterium, whether it's a rabbit, a dog, a city, a country, or a god, or an extraterrestrial of incredible power, you can negotiate with it, because if it has purpose, it wants something, and you might have something to offer. So I was able to negotiate with Five, and Five was willing to share different math with me, as I said, in exchange for me being loyal and devoted to Five and doing some other things as well.
Wow. Have you heard of what's known as, because this is what sounds similar to this corridor that you're talking about mentioning, the halls of Amenti?
No, tell me.
So essentially, I'm no expert, but essentially it's like this hall of records, this place where all information is stored. I believe, like in the New Age, they would call it, it would be the Akashic records. But I believe it was in Egypt, they called it the halls of Amenti. So this essentially what the Library of Alexandria really is. Like this place where all the information and all the books are, but not physically. This place where maybe they're imprinted into the ethers, they're recorded there, and you can go visit and learn these ways. So it sounds very similar to this place. You're going through these hallways and corridors and opening up doors, and there's beings in there that are willing to talk to you or willing to teach you. So yeah, that's something to definitely look into. I just wanted to know if you heard of the term halls of Amenti.
Well, it was halls of knowledge, and it sounds like what you're describing is a similar thing, a place that one can acquire learning and knowledge and new ideas, and that's certainly what the Maze of Souls was for me.
So whenever this started, you had this encounter, and it's just mind-blowing. Come back and process it. Oh my God, what is this?
Yeah, so I talked to everybody about it. I thought it was the most amazing, incredible, miraculous thing I had ever experienced. And quite understandably, word of this got back to the dean of student affairs at MIT, and the dean called me into his office. And I shared all of this with great enthusiasm. I thought this was the most wonderful thing ever. And he took a look at me and kicked me out of MIT, and I got committed to a mental hospital. So I was actually committed to a mental hospital for more than 2 months because of this. But I got out, and as soon as I got out, I had another experience, and I've been having them ever since then. When I was younger, in my 20s, I was only able to access the Maze of Souls with the use of drugs, but today I no longer need any equipment or substances or anything. I'm able to experience that anytime now, as a result of having spent so many years engaged with this business.
So you would consume LSD or other psychotropics
in the early years, yes,
and then go learn, and then come back and write down what you've learned and things. So that's how the teaching progressed. Yes,
and then they also guided me. One of the biggest pieces of this was to try to understand consciousness. Our ability to be aware. How are we even aware that we're talking to someone? How are we aware of the physical reality around us? How does our mind work? This was a great mystery kind of at the heart of this. And so one of the things that they did, especially in the early going, was guide me to an understanding of that. That's how I ended up I got my PhD from Boston University because this was a program that has a very mathematical approach to the mind. And so the Intex, the extraterrestrials, guided me to this specific program, and they guided me to specific people there that were doing the math. And they said, this is the math to learn. And I learned that math, and it was indeed the math that explains how consciousness works. And once I understood how consciousness works, I was able to understand how autism works, how pain works, but I also was able to understand how the extraterrestrials are communicating with me. I can explain it. It'll take about 5 minutes. If you don't mind me, I can explain this mechanism. So you need to understand how consciousness works. I'll give you a very brief summary of how consciousness works in our brain. Whenever you're having a conscious experience, when you're aware, when you have a feeling of love or anger or joy, when you have a feeling, when you're looking at something, I'm looking at my hand, I see it's got 5 fingers, it's flesh colored. When you're having a conscious experience, something specific is happening in your brain. It's a physical dynamic called resonance. What is resonating? We have a expectation. Whenever we're interacting with the world, we expect to see something or hear something. We make a prediction. I'm on a podcast, so I expect to see you, Truth, sitting across from me. That's my expectation. But we also take in the facts, the perceptions. Our eyes actually see things. So what happens in our brain is our expectation gets matched up with the facts we're perceiving. If they match, resonance occurs. It's sort of like when a trumpet and a violin play the same note. The note resonates. It gets louder. It lasts longer. The two instruments get in sync. That's what happens in our brain between an expectation and a fact. They synchronize. They resonate. We have many modules in our brain that are capable of resonating and producing consciousness. We have a visual module that recognizes things we see. We have an audio module that recognizes things we hear. We have an emotion module that assigns feelings and makes us feel love or happiness or fear or whatever the case may be. Each of these is capable of resonance. And here's the amazing thing that the extraterrestrials shared with me. These resonant modules can resonate together. That's how we have a multimodal conscious experience. When we're watching a movie, our audio module is generating consciousness, our visual module is generating consciousness, our feeling model is generating consciousness, and these are resonating together. So that's why we have all of these experiences at the same time in our brain. How does this help us understand how extraterrestrials are communicating with me and instilling math within my head? So what they do is they set up resonances within my brain. So they are able to communicate visions, ideas, concepts, visual revelations by resonating with my brain. So they are able to generate basically an extended conscious experience. And once I understood this, I've been able to get better and better control over the years. In the early years, they would share math with me, and I did not understand any of it. It was way beyond me. It was like just a fire hose of craziness. But over the years, as I've gotten better and better and started to understand how it works, I'm finally able to make sense of it. For example, I just explained to you how consciousness worked. They showed that to me that very first time when I was 18 years old at MIT, but I didn't understand it back then. I didn't have enough knowledge and framework. It's taken many years, but now I'm beginning to understand the things that they've been sharing with me.
And is this in the, I won't say the dream state, but is this through the activated imagination, or where you close your eyes and go in, or is it open eye visuals? How are you seeing all this?
That's an excellent question. So our mind has different states of consciousness. An easy one, when we're asleep, that's a sleep state of consciousness. It's not the same as when we're awake. We can also, on drugs, they give us different psychedelic states of consciousness. If you take LSD, some kinds of marijuana, large doses, you're going to enter a different state of consciousness. There is a special state of consciousness when I'm communicating with the intex. I call it the intex state of consciousness. I believe it is similar to a schizophrenic state of consciousness. Schizophrenics also have a distinctive state of consciousness. They get very impressionable, very suggestive. They're open to messages from the world. The intex state of consciousness is very similar to that. It's an openness to the world. I feel intensely connected with reality around me. I feel like I know everything from the molecules in my body to the cosmic flow of galaxies around me. All of it just seems super aware. It's a very strange and distinctive state of consciousness when I'm communicating with them. A little bit akin, I imagine, to a schizophrenic state of consciousness, but I'm pretty sure it's not exactly identical, because schizophrenics usually don't get math that explains how the world works. And when I'm in these states, when I come out of it, I have new knowledge I didn't have before about the way the world works. And it has always proven to be accurate. Sometimes it takes time to figure out how it works. It's very confusing sometimes because it's new math, but then I figure it out. And I've published many books about these, certainly endorsed by prominent mainstream scientists. These are not, obscure books at all. And they are coming from the messages I get in these visions from the extraterrestrials. It's remarkable.
Are you aware of the quote that Joseph Campbell said, that the waters in which the schizophrenic drowns is the same water in which the mystic swims with delight?
I have not heard that. That is a beautiful, beautiful quote, and right on the money as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, me too. I call it a form of psychosis in a way, because but we've only given it a negative connotation, but that's just a state of consciousness, right? That you're in and haven't learned to function in, which is what reality is anyway. They've taught us to, what these things are. A tree is a tree, a cloud is a cloud, the sun is a ball of gas, and these things. And so there's a construct that which we've all agreed upon to gaze at it and say that that is what it is. But the moment one steps into a heightened state, a different state of conscious awareness, the tree is no longer a tree. There is a relationship. So it's you feel deeply, you feel like it's a friend, that we exhale carbon and it exhales oxygen, and we need each other. So we're in relationship, like you said, with the molecules and the universes and everything around us. The states of psychosis, if you will, people would call that, when I would walk around talking to trees and hugging trees, and they're talking back and those things. And it's just a level that maybe other people aren't on. And then the one who's the odd man out looks like the one who is the crazy person or the schizophrenic. So what I've experienced in my journey was the beginning of this in the negative dark side of trying to get into seance rituals and Satanism and different dark occultic things as a teenager, just a misguided youth. And I got in, opened up portals in my mind, started seeing these beings. They started pulling me into trances and speaking languages, and they saw me as an open vessel, but it was mixed with debauchery. It was mixed with, a lot of negative energy, if you will. And I got to see the beings, I would say, that I was entertaining on that side. I hit rock bottom. I was going to be put in a straitjacket for sure, but I had been a Christian before, and I knew that there was a conscious state of peace, love, grace that flows directly to you in this presence of God, of Christ, if you will, that I had experienced before. So I knew it was there, and I did whatever I had to do to get back to that level. And I did, and I found peace in my life and traveled and journeyed there for freedom and a battle over my own mind. But now, years later, this is over 20 years ago, well over 20 years ago, now I found that many of the things that I was experiencing in that demonic, if you will, darker psychosis, in the shades of gray down into the blackness, they exist going up into the beauty, into the bliss, into colorful spectrums of light. So these are both different levels of psychosis that when I was in the dark place, I knew a doctor couldn't understand me. And now that I'm in this heightened sense of beauty and bliss, I know a doctor can't understand me. But the more we share, just like we're doing now on this podcast, and you coming forth with your story, people who are out there experiencing this stuff and scared to talk about it, which many times leads to a deeper psychosis, right? So this is so powerful.
Isolation,
and just
alienation,
having this conversation and you coming forth and everybody bringing their piece of the puzzle. Different levels of psychosis, right?
I couldn't agree more. I too, certainly when I was younger, and just wrestling with this, it is dark. It can be very dark, and because you don't have an understanding of it and you don't know what to do with it, and you're young. We're both guys too, and there's a male element. Usually there's some aggression in there. There's usually some anger in there somewhere too, especially when you're young and you got to work all that, and it can lead you to some dark places. But I agree with you talking about the role of psychosis. If we want to elevate our consciousness, if we truly want to understand things in a new way, we need to enter a new state, and that will always feel like a transformation. It will feel like a psychosis, because if we want that tree to become a friend. That's a transition out of our usual way of thinking. There's no way to experience that except in an alternate state. And I think this applies to anything. Like, the first people who really understood that the earth went around the sun instead of the sun going around the earth, that was a transformation. It seemed like psychosis. It took a long time for people to accept it. And the first people that did, it was like a psychotic episode. How can you say the universe is going this way instead of that way? It was hard for people to understand. That's really, when we have these psychoses, it's a lot like just accepting that the earth goes around the sun instead of the sun going around the earth. It's that kind of change. And we just don't have any framework for it. So we call it crazy or lunatic or an alternate state. But it's just the only way for our mind to reach new levels of understanding and wisdom and perspective is to go through these transformations, which can be experienced as, a spiritual reckoning or a psychotic reckoning.
Yeah, it's these things that can springboard you into a heightened state. And, there's many different ways to get there. Many people get there through trauma. Trauma does, man, it definitely shakes up what's in there for sure. And then you have to try to hopefully put it back together and put it back together better, One of the things I wanted to ask you, because I know how your mind works in a sense of you want to get this down to an equation. Like, okay,
Yes.
How do we get back? How do we leave breadcrumbs that we can go back and keep being taught? Hey,
That's
I
exactly
don't
it,
know how
yes.
to do it. And so to study it and to map it out and to talk openly about these things and get to, I would say, I don't know if I would say similar results, but if we look at somebody like Steve Jobs or some of the great thinkers, Albert Einstein and these things, and and maybe they have had LSD experiences, definitely Steve Jobs and those guys, but
Yes, he did. Yeah.
it seems like that many people are getting to this naturally. Like there's like a natural place where people come to epiphanies and they sit quietly in silence and their mind is full of thoughts and ideas and they shut it up, and then finally those thoughts begin to make sense and be more gentle, and then they write it down and boom, they're being communicated with and don't even know it. But someone like you and myself and many others, we're like, hey, it was actually an alien that we saw, or this ET intelligence that was standing in the hovering above my house, or whatever the case is. The science of it is something of infatuation. Do you think that there's many people just by this just the process that is a natural process that you, myself, and many others are trying your best to explain such processes, and maybe explaining it scares people if you was just to show the results, maybe like a Steve Jobs. Hey, this is what we did. Boom, boom, boom. There's no talking about what goes on in the sacred ceremony, that kind of thing. But you're like, hey, this is how I did it because you can do it too, kind of thing. Can you talk a little bit about that?
That's exactly why I'm finally coming out to talk about it, is I think this is a state of consciousness to connect with these intellects that anybody can have. We're all in the same reality, and there's nothing special about me. I wasn't chosen or anything like that. I'm just experiencing the world the same as everyone. I think my autism probably had something to do with my ability, because I think, as you're saying, I think all of us have these kinds of experiences or opportunities for the experiences, just interacting with reality. It is reality. It's a truth about reality. So as long as we're interacting with reality, there's always an opportunity to find these deeper levels there. But I think so many of us, we just put those blinders on. We just close our eyes. We're focused on the here and now. Got to earn that paycheck. Got to pay that mortgage. Got to pay that rent. That's what's on our minds. And so when these opportunities come, we just get tunnel vision. We ignore them. I think my autism, I told you I went through this trap door. So what I saw was, there was like a pixel in reality. It was a little iridescent thing. And my autistic mind just latched onto it, started wondering what it was, and it would not let go. And this pixel turned into a wire in reality. I followed the wire and it opened up into a tunnel. And my autistic mind wouldn't let it go. When you're autistic, you get obsessions. My autistic special interest has always been the fundamental nature of reality. And so once I saw this pixel that just opened up and led me into this maze of souls, I just couldn't let go. But you don't need an autistic mind to do these things. that's why I'm sharing it. I'm going to try to help people so that maybe if you don't have that natural sensitivity, you don't need it. I will show you the ways. That's why I'm writing a book right now about these experiences. I hope you don't mind me mentioning it. It's called Large Gods for Small Children. It's now available on Amazon and Apple. I'm going to release a chapter every few weeks, but I'm explaining how I was able to contact and how anybody can as well. You mentioned math. For me, all the math is a way of taking these revelations and presenting in a way that people can understand. Words are helpful, but words are vague also. If we really want to understand, hey, how are they talking to you? How are they delivering this information? Well, we need a little science, a little math. Math allows us to communicate. The irony is I hate math. I am not a math lover. When I was young, I finished like math in high school and I thought I would never have to take it in college. And then these beings started communicating with me in math. It was awful at first. People think I'm some kind of math genius. No, I had to learn because that's how they were communicating with me. I don't want to talk about math. It's hard for me. It's challenging. I'm not great at it, but I had to spend my life trying to understand this because I feel like that's the only way to give concrete information to other people. It's one thing. It's wonderful to talk about our experiences. It's wonderful to share our experience. I love hearing about your experiences, Truth, when you were younger and how you started in a dark place, but you found the light. I love these stories and we should all share them. Like you're saying, I think the show is great. But at some point, if we want people to do X, Y, and Z, and then you have a chance of seeing this or experiencing this, you need a little math and science. And so that's what I'm trying to do.
I know we're headed somewhere, right? We're headed somewhere beautiful. I'll say that. I'm very optimistic, and that, whoever's the beauty is in the eye of the beholder. But are a lot of these things lost sciences? Like, did we know this at one time? Was this common knowledge? I mean, when we look at Egypt, when we look at antiquity, we see very beautiful homes, houses, sacred geometry, connection with the sun. In Israel, they only, built their houses so high and with flat roofs, so everyone could go out and see the sun and greet the sun. But we're lost from even our connection with what that means. But it's hidden in ancient texts. It's hidden in the Bible and many different texts. But is this something that we once knew, or is it that and more? Because there's this talk in many circles like the next stage, we want the next thing that's coming, and I agree, but I feel like we're just so far behind when it comes to the ancient ways, the ancient technologies, how they understood math and light and healing through sunlight, or healing through even changing the color of the sunlight as it's coming through you through glass pane windows and things like this, to focus on that energy, which is color, which is sound, which is frequency, which is math, like you're saying. Is this something you believe that the ancients knew, or is this like brand new revelations?
Truth. Let me tell you what I believe. It's a little bit different perspective, perhaps. So I do think the ancients had a wisdom that has been lost. I think they had a more direct relationship with nature. They were directly in contact with the soil, with the animals, with the plants. They knew them with an intimacy and familiarity that's long lost. There might be some people alive today. There might be some farmers or some other people who are involved in nature. But as a society, as a species, we've lost it. They used to have a relationship with the stars. They knew all the stars, all the constellations, all the planets moving around. Every night, they communed with the sky because the sky was real. The way now we're looking at screens, we're looking at text messages, we're looking at social media. They were looking at the stars and the leaves and the soil.
But we are looking into pixels to a portal, though, right?
Yes, that's right. And the flames, the fire. They had a relationship with fire that's lost. Their meals were fire. Campfire. Fire was very much a part of their world. We've lost that. These relationships to these basic physical substances, the wind, the flames, the soil, the leaves. So they did have wisdom about that has been lost, no doubt. However, I do think that we today are creating new wisdom and accessing new ideas, new concepts that have never before been part of human civilization. Let me tell you why I think this. So one of the biggest revelations that Intex shared with me is something I call the cosmic cycle. They call it the ladder of purpose. Let me explain how this works. This is why reality, existence, the universe we live in is a never-ending story. It goes on and on and on. Here's how it works. At the bottom of this cycle, at the bottom of this ladder of purpose is what the in-text calls chaotica. Physicists call it quantum physics. It's these quantum sub-microscopic events going on all the time, bubbling, frothing. They call it chaotica. It is purposeless. It is aimless. There is no goal there. There are no minds. There's no thinking. There's no purpose. It's just randomness, controlled randomness, randomness. That's at the bottom. That randomness produces what Intex calls mind seed. Mind seed are molecules and other items. It might be an amino acid. It might be an oxygen molecule. These are physical pieces, small physical pieces, again, aimless, no purpose. An oxygen molecule does not have a goal. It doesn't care where it is. It just is floating around randomly. These are mind seed. When you put mind seed together in a particular configuration, you get purpose, you get minds. The very first minds on Earth were these single-celled creatures, bacteria, protozoa, another tiny creature called archaea was the oldest of all. They were the first purposeful entities in the universe. They had purpose. Bacteria wants to go to the light. It wants to find food. It wants to escape from poisons and toxins. It has purpose. So we did this transition from mind seed, physical stuff with no purpose, by putting it together in a configuration, a molecular network. Now you have purpose. Now you have a bacteria that's swimming towards the light. It's towards something. It has purpose. And we keep going from here. The next stage, those are molecule minds. Those minds inside bacteria and protozoa. The thinking elements are all individual molecules. We can identify every single molecule in these minds. The next level are neuron minds. These are jellyfish, insects, worms. They have neurons, but they don't have brains, not the way we think of brains. Then the next level are the module minds. These are all the vertebrates. This is fish, amphibians, birds, mammals, reptiles. They all have 3 layers of thinking. They have, inside each neuron is a molecule mind. Around that are neural networks. That's also a level of thinking. And now around that is a new level of thinking, modular thinking. These are the conscious modules I was talking about earlier. Like when we look at a visual object, we recognize an object that happens in a visual conscious module. It's this third level where consciousness comes out, and it keeps going. The fourth level is the supermind. We, each individual human being, you, Truth, and me, we are the thinking elements in the human supermind, human society. We are designed to think as one. That's why we have language. We talk with gestures. We communicate with each other in a variety of ways. We are designed to be part of a single supermind. Our brains are like network routers that need to be plugged into a network to exchange information. That's what we're designed to be. We're the only creatures on Earth that have risen to this level. We're the only 4th rung creatures. We're only the only minds that have 4 levels of thinking. All the other creatures have 3 levels or less. But it doesn't stop. It keeps going. If you combine superminds together, you get a hypermind. This is what we're seeing on Earth right now. It seems chaotic. It seems hyper-partisan in America. Democrats and Republicans fighting each other. And social media, full of hate. There's so much hate and anger and hostility. And there's war. The world just seems like it's in a state of transition and transformation and chaos. This is what we see throughout history, throughout evolutionary history. We're talking hundreds of millions of years when I say this. Throughout history, each time a new level of thinking, molecule minds, neuron minds, module minds, superminds, each time a new level, now hyperminds, comes, it is always this chaos as all the pieces get realigned to create this new level of awareness. So maybe we will succeed. Maybe the end of this incredibly chaotic process we're all going through right now will be the formation of a planetary hypermind where all of the nation states on Earth can operate together in harmony. Just like in our brain, all of our modules work together in harmony. It took a long time for evolution to get that to work, to produce us. Right now it's happening at another level, but it never stops past the hypermind with other species out there in the world. So if we become a hypermind, we'll probably take over the solar system. We'll meet other entities out there. If we combine, that forms ultraminds. It keeps going. There is a top level to all of this. This is the in-text that I've been in contact with, like 5. There's another one called 3. 3 is not compatible with humankind. 3 is an enemy. It's not that they're evil, though it certainly feels like evil and darkness if you interact with 3. It's just they're incompatible with what we think of as human nature. 5 is very compatible. So at the top of this ladder of purpose, it keeps going. At the top are axiomized minds. So these entities I've been in contact with, apparently you get to a certain level and you need to make a commitment to your values. What do you believe in as a society, as this ultra mind, as a super mind? You got to make a commitment to your values, your beliefs. This is what we think is good. This is what we think is bad. And this commitment happens mathematically. You have to select axioms. And when you do this, apparently, this is what Intex tells me, you get access to ultimate technology. Now you can change quantum physics. This is the cycle. Now you have the ability to change the fabric of reality. The problem is there's other axiomized minds. I mentioned 5 and 3. They are in contest for the shape of reality. They are both trying to reshape quantum physics to suit their understanding of reality. This is a never-ending cycle. These axiomized minds, they're like gods competing for control of reality. But we are part of it. This is what's so beautiful about this view of all of this. They are not separate. They are made of us. The decisions we make, that Truth, you and I make in our lives, the decision to do good or do wrong, to be selfish or to be generous, this is creating these gods. It is all these little decisions that all the 8 billion people are making that are going to contribute to the God that we may one day be part of. The gods are us. So we are the ones shaping reality. The decisions we make in our lives, no matter how small, is real. No matter how infinitesimal, it is not zero. You can measure it, and it's making a difference to the future shape of reality. It means our lives matter. The future is not predetermined. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Even the gods do not know what's going to happen tomorrow. They are in contest, the same as us, and it just goes on and on. We might rise, humanity might rise and join one of these axiomized minds. We might have people one day leading some of these great decisions, or we may destroy the earth through horrible climate change and get wiped out. And maybe in 100 million years, there'll be raccoon minds coming up on earth, and maybe they're the ones that will ascend. That's what's so wonderful. We don't know. It's up to us to make the difference in the world, in the universe.
Yeah, so profoundly put. And that can be explained and experienced in many different ways than it is. So essentially your vote does count. You vote with your energy, your mind, will, and emotions is your vote, is what you...
The choices you make in your life, they matter. They truly matter. The future is not predetermined. You know, it is not... Some people think there's no free will, that it's all cast in stone. No, not remotely. It's purpose, competing purpose all the way up and all the way down. It is beings, and we're all cooperating and competing endlessly. And it just goes on and on and on. And it means each individual's life has value. It matters. The decisions you make will influence the face of God that will come, you know, for generations hence.
Yeah, so good. Another question. So this meeting, you know, this being taught, have you seen them physically? Do they allow you to see them physically?
I think
or with open eyes?
No. So no, but I do. There was one experience. I had one experience where I believe I saw some representative. So I don't know if I'm interacting with, for all I know, they could be like AIs from this civilization, just like that. If some low-level creature like a human, like me, accesses this, it's not like they have other people that sit there, customer service represents. I bet it's some kind of device or machine, you know, very advanced. So I you know, when I say device, I don't mean like an iPad. I imagine it's something very, very sophisticated because it's able to interact with me in real time and deliver incredibly sophisticated concepts very fluidly. But I do doubt that I'm interacting with, you know, a person, you know, a single living alien who's sitting in a chair somewhere talking to me. I don't think that's what's happening. I think I'm accessing some kind of machinery or computational interface that's allowing them. You know, it's their intelligence, it's their being behind it. But I don't actually think, like, when this is happening, there's like, you know, a little green man sitting on a stool, you know, having a conversation with me. It doesn't feel like that. It feels vast,
Yes.
big, beyond.
Yeah, and you're tapping into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's why a lot of the UFO stuff is coming out in the news now, so that they can take control of the narrative. And you just said, like, how important is the narrative? How many people can we convince that there is a threat and we need to band together and fight against this threat? I mean, this was even said by our government many years ago as something that would come forth when I believe that we reach the level of consciousness where we start interacting with said beings, or we start incarnating here from their star systems or whatever. So now there's a lot more people who are tapping in, or people who are autistic. And so it's my belief that not even autism, but even looking at, children with Down syndrome, like the joy, and they're just wired different of what they're able to bring, and a smile and childlike wonder, and the way that people who are autistic, and then you try to sit them in a chair for 8 hours and be still in a classroom, it don't work like that. And so we're being forced to upgrade, if you will, or be judged by the way we've treated our angels, if you will. And it seems that we're, raising to a new level of consciousness, because at first it feels like you're alone, right? When you're going through this, when you're in college and you're having this epiphany and this encounter, it's like, oh God, who can I talk to? And you know how many years it takes to figure out there's nobody you can talk to until there is. Until you find the other people. So, oh yeah, I'm being taught too. What time do you go to class? Oh wow. So it's marked with, and so this does go back many years, and people are experiencing it now, and the words, and how to interact with it, and how to go back. One of the things that stuck out to me when you were talking about dealing with the math equations and all of this advanced stuff, that you're the perfect person for the job because you went to college and you studied and you was a math whiz. It doesn't work like that. For me, there's a picture of in the scriptures of Jesus going and get his 12 of these people who were like the least likely to succeed, the least likely, even Jesus being from Nazareth, and like, man, what good? Nazareth, this is a slum. Like, no, we need somebody who has not learned. Why? So we can teach them the right way, and the glory only goes to the creator versus the people band together, so that that it's some type of intelligence, something far beyond you, right? Because you don't know this kind of things, but you're being shown, and you wake up and advanced math equations or sacred geometric patterns that keep coming to you, and you're like, what do I do with this?
You've hit on an excellent point, which is sometimes too much education is a bad thing. Some people who spend a lot of time in school, I got to admit, I have some of the most narrow minds you're going to meet. They learn a lot of stuff from books. Look, you should learn. Kids, go learn from books. Nothing wrong from learning from books. But you got to always learn from the world too. Book learning is great. World learning, always more important. And what happens is people spend too much time in books, too much time in universities, too much time in these academic ivory towers, and then they can't relate back down to the direct experience of the universe, which is where we all live and inhabit, and where these revelations occur. And so I find oftentimes academics just have a hard time making the leap, the jump, to understand a direct connection with the reality, with the universe, with these beings. So I do think it can often be an advantage to start out with less education, because your mind's more open. That's what happened to me. Yeah. I started out, I did not have a science background. My parents did not raise me religious, but they didn't raise me scientifically, nor did they raise me atheist. My parents were just silent on metaphysical questions. But that meant when this happened to me, I didn't immediately go, oh, this got to be a scientific explanation. But I also didn't say, oh, this must be the Christian God. I did not know what it was. I kept an open mind. I did not immediately turn to physics. I didn't immediately turn to Christianity either. I just said, I'm going to figure this out as it is, as it's presented to me on its own terms. I'm not going to bring anything to the table. I'm just going to listen to what this has to teach me. And now looking back, that was the right approach. I think we talked about how I think everyone comes in contact with this at some point because it is the reality. So we're interacting with it. It's really, we just cut ourselves off from it. But I think what happens too is we bring our pre-existing ideas and values and beliefs, and that's a good thing. That can be a good thing. But sometimes it gives us a ceiling, an artificial ceiling, that if we were willing to put aside some of the beliefs that we came with, especially people who are overeducated, but also any of us can come, our parents give us beliefs, teach us things that can be helpful. But sometimes if you want this ultimate knowledge, if you want to go beyond and touch the stars, if you want to touch reality at its deepest, you've got to let go of the things that you've been taught because you've only been taught by other people, what other humanity knows up to this point. If you want to go beyond what humanity knows, you've got to let go of what you've learned. And that gives you a chance of learning something extraordinary and new. And I think that's what happened to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's happening to a lot of people. And it's a challenge and it's been fun. So like once we know that this is part of the curriculum, so going to be taught, like that you have to unlearn. And especially the things you've demonized, which I found very fun, because once you judge it, it like there's a brick wall that comes up. Once they hear the story, oh, he's a basket case. Yeah, he was a reject. He got kicked out of college. Don't listen to him. And you put up this wall until if some of those people at Harvard or whatever come and listen to you and say, hold on, he said a couple things that made sense. Let me listen a little bit more deeply because some of it's starting to make sense. If they'll move past that veil, then they'll be initiated to the information of what you're trying to teach, and who is teaching through you is teaching. So it's not just you, it's you and your order, if you will, that you're learning from. It's been fun to go back and look at all the things that I said, places that God wasn't, places that, really God or love or whatever, wasn't, because, coming from a religious background, and then to see God in it all, or to see Christ, which is love. And you spoke about on other interviews the importance of love, and say, okay, love is only here, or love is only there. Love is only in the Christian church, my friend. They're the only ones with it. And we're been brainwashed, and at least I was, and many, many people. And so we've called other people demonic. We've called Catholics deceived. Oh, they're deceived. All of that stuff is demonic. All of it's pagan. The Egyptians, they're deceived. All of that's demonic. They're in touch with demons. Until you say, hold on, maybe they weren't. Maybe they weren't. I don't know that they were or not. Versus coming from the aspect of the know-it-all, which is what we're trained to do. And we have no idea. We have no idea because like I know, everything's multidimensional. Are we just talking about the physical? Are we talking about the interior? Are we talking about the celestial realm of it? That all of it exists in multiple dimensions. So it's been fun to be brought through that ringer of looking at the things that that I thought I knew. And for me, it's this question, and it seems like I'm hearing it from you too. In the scriptures, when the Israelites were in this place of the wilderness and they were looking for food, and God fed them supernaturally with manna from heaven, right? And so the word manna simply translates to, what is this? What is this? And Jesus says, give us this day our daily bread. Give me today what I need. So that daily bread in the wilderness was manna. It's contemplation. It's to ask the question, is to look again at, for me, Catholicism or the Masons, whatever, a tree, and say, hold on, what is this? Or it's a tree. You know exactly what it is. You can cut them down. You can make fire out of them. It's just, no. I think I asked the tree to move, and it moved for me. Like, I feel like why when I take my shoes off and put my feet on the earth, why do I feel like all of the pressure that I've been holding? Why do I feel grounded when I put the soles of my feet on the ground? Why does my soul feel at ease? What is this? What is this? And the fact that many people took the same LSD many times over, seem more qualified than you, quite honestly. But you said many people saw the pixel. What is this? wait a minute, guys. What is this? It's just a light, man. You're tripping, dude. No.
Yeah.
I've tripped many times. What is this? And it's like, that is the initiation to go back and just
That
look
was
at
it.
everything. And I mean everything, and say, what is this? It's such a beautiful, profound way to learn. And it is my curriculum at this point. And it's a lot of ours.
And truth, we never want to close the door on love. So I really appreciated what you said about it. It's wonderful to go back, and when we limit our love and we say, oh, that this is the group that loves, but these groups aren't deserving of our love, never want to do that. You got to open yourself up, because love is everywhere. You mentioned, so I'd say the number one revelation that Intex has shared with me, and you mentioned it, just the one that transformed me more than anything else, was this. Intex revealed to me there is a cosmic purpose for love, that the physical reality we live in was designed for love to emerge again and again in infinite forms, constantly changing, but always emerging. Compassion. I talked about that ladder of purpose, how there's different levels. There's the molecule minds, the bacteria at the bottom. Then there's the neuron minds, the worms, the insects, invertebrates. Then the module minds, vertebrates, fish, amphibians. Each of these transitions going up from the single cell creatures to invertebrates, going from invertebrates to vertebrates, then going from vertebrates, from mammals to humans with our super minds, where we have language, we're all bound together. Each of these transitions only happens through love. The only way we can ascend to new levels of intelligence, understanding, resilience, wisdom is through love. Here's why. Each time there's a transition, for the single cell creatures, those little bacteria, microscopic bacteria, to turn into worms and insects with lots of cells, with neurons. How did that happen? The individual cells had to come together and self-sacrifice. They had to say, we're going to give up a little to get a lot. We're going to lose a little individuality. I can no longer go on my own and decide where to go. I have to work it out with the other cells. Together we'll decide where to go. I'm losing a little individuality, but I'm sacrificing myself to be part of others. And this is what happens each time. And that's what we're going through right now. If we want to reach the hypermind stage, we've got to learn to love each other, to accept our diversity, our differences. Like you said, we start out thinking, no, only this group, my group, is deserving of love. Those other groups, they're questionable. They're shaky. I don't know about those guys. It's only when we start to love everyone, or at least accept, respect, tolerate everyone. There's always going to be some people, it's going to be hard to feel that love, but we can respect them. We can tolerate them. We can accept them. We can say, you know what? You've got different views than me, different values, but you're another human, and I respect you for that. And we'll find a way to inhabit this world together, you with your vision and us with ours. And once we do this on the global scale, that's the only way. There's no other way to generate a new level of intelligence and awareness and resilience and adaptiveness. Those only come, we've seen through 1 billion years of evolution on Earth, these major transitions of purpose, of awareness, they only happen through love. And this is true throughout the universe. If we encounter aliens in another galaxy, they will have gone through these same levels. They will have gone through stages of love in order to achieve the level of consciousness that we have. And this, I think, is the most beautiful thing at all, because it is embedded in the structure of reality. For there to be conscious beings like us, there needs to be love. We need to have some measure. In our brain, all of the things in our brain love each other. The modules all get along with each other. If one module just had a death wish against another module, if the vision module, get rid of the audio module, we'd be in terrible trouble. Our brains wouldn't work right. That might even be the source of some mental illnesses. So the same thing happens at every level of reality. To get to those new levels of intelligence, we've got to love one another.
So good. My mind goes to Bible verses this way, because that's just, I know so much, and like, it's the body of Christ. It is, as far as what the scriptures call of love. Like, in order for this vehicle to work, you got to have 4 tires. What about 3? The 4th tire, we don't need it. You're going to need it. You're going to go slower. You're going to veer. We don't need a steering wheel. You actually do. Or I don't need my hand. I don't need my thumbs. Oh, you do need thumbs. Trust me. We need every part of the body working together for this thing to manifest and for this thing to be able to operate in this reality. And then at some point, as they come together, like you said, all of these different pieces and they form the one, they eventually, now you can say, hey, that's the one. You see him? He's Derek. He's Ogi. Like, he's all of these. He's Jesus. It's like, no. I must give myself up so that the sum can become the something. And so that I can merge with the greater collective, so that Jesus taught this. And Paul, it's like in these religious teachings that were like, he said, no, they were begging him to stay in human form. You know, we can set up a great empire and control things. And there's so many people listening to you. We got this. No. It don't work like that. I'm carrying a lot, but I can only be in certain places at certain times. And I got to give myself up. Because once a seed has to go into the ground. A seed has to go into the ground. And that seed is going to bring forth a tree that brings forth fruit, that brings forth many, many, many seeds. And now I can be all over the world. I can talk to all of you one-on-one at the same time versus having to go sit with you and I've only got 24 hours, and this way of giving oneself up. So you're talking about this collective consciousness of what the majority wants. And there is a war for the narrative, because I know that the majority is choosing love. And so there are shifts happening. The heavens are responding. The sun is echoing back in resonance what the cry of the people is. Love, freedom, peace, joy. But they're deceptive in showing us on our cell phones murder and fighting and buy this and you're depressed and you'll never be okay unless you get this. And it's like, that's not our reality. That's your reality you're selling us. Because there's something greater. There's another a place that we can get fulfillment, peace, and joy from. It's as simple as in the breath and just simply saying this. My day changes when I just say thank you. I try my best to start every morning that way. It don't take long. Just sit down and just take a breath and, man, thank you for this. Thank you for this moment, because it's not like, the ego. It is the ego in this moment, because I'm here as TruthSeekah, as Derek, and I like the life I've created, but this is temporary, and I know what is next. And because I'm here, let me say thank you. Let me program these cells and molecules that I'm gonna be okay. I'm gonna be taken care of. And you know what? I'm not promised tomorrow, so while I have today, let me say thank you. It's so powerful. It's so profound, and that is the new narrative.
Having that attitude of gratitude is wonders for the soul. It heals your soul, calms your soul, fulfills your soul. I couldn't agree with you more. Just, you got to have gratitude for this amazing universe that we're in, that is so full of love and other people. And it's a glorious place, and we should be thankful for it.
Speaking of those levels of consciousness or those levels of schizophrenia or psychosis, whatever, because they go up and down, and to be in a beautiful, blissful one is amazing, right? Everyone's in one and don't know it. Let's just say that. There's a word that's beautiful. You may have heard this word, but so for paranoia, it's something that a lot of people experience on the downward spiral. It's this dark place where everyone's out to get me. I'm gonna. They've got wires in here and they've got cameras watching me, and they're in the trees, and, they're sending unmarked vehicles out here gang stalking me. It goes really deep and really dark, and it is demonic. But for that to exist at a level -3 of paranoia, at level +3, and it can simply shift whenever you say yes and you reprogram your mind, is something that's called pronoia. And it shifts essentially it's the same thing as paranoia, but the opposite. God, the angels, everyone is out to help me. They're all rooting for me. They all want me to succeed. In the moment that you shift into that belief and begin to think about it and daydream and ask, what is this? How are you trying to help me? How are you here to help me with my finances and pay bills? Yes, because it responds on what you put out. You'll find a resonance. And for that level of consciousness of paranoia, there's pronoia. So my advice to listeners, man, who get in these states of paranoia, and I get messages daily, and I've been there. There's a beauty and a bliss that exists that is beyond any of your wildest dreams, that all you got to do is ask for it and say yes, and it begins to shift your world.
I love that concept, Truth, of pronoia. It makes a lot of sense. And yeah, I can see it. You should feel the universe is on your side. The universe does want you to succeed. Everything that came before you to get you here, all the lives, so many lives, countless lives, near infinite lives, just so you could be. They all did what they did so that you could be here and have these experiences. The universe does want you to be here and does want you to experience it, because everything that came before you is for and just like we want those ahead of us, one day our children, our children's children, we want them to succeed too. And the decisions we make will influence that. And so we have a part of this endless chain of living beings striving and wanting those that come in the future to have a better experience than what they had. So what this means is we are here for a reason, and the universe wants you to feel love and joy and happiness and harmony.
So awesome. So awesome. One last question. Do you resonate? Obviously, it's just wording, and wording is so weird, right? With religious or like connotation that you tie into it. Do you resonate at all with the term channeling? Does it feel like you are a receiver, like a television that's able to dial in on a certain frequency to be taught and to receive that information from five?
That's an excellent question, Truth. I'd say in the very early going, before I really understood anything, when I was just a young person experiencing the impossible with no framework. Yes, then in the early days, I say it's a lot like channeling, where I was a vessel. The messages would just come in, and I would do what I could with them, which was usually not much, because it was so in the early days so crazy. But over time, it's now more of a conversation. I am now definitely an independent agent. It's like interacting with like the United States or something. When I interact with five, it is very powerful. It's not like interacting with another person sitting on a chair. It is like interacting with a nation that's issuing press releases or something. It's a lot more. That's not exactly right, but it's more like that than a conversation with a person. But it still is. Now I ask questions and I get answers. In the early going, it just came. Now though, I would never want to say I can control it completely. That's definitely not true, but I can influence it, and I can stand up for myself a little bit. I don't want to go too far. These are like gods. Five, is all power. Five has changed the physical reality around me in ways and done things with time, done impossible, miraculous things. So I'm not going to sit here and pretend that it's anywhere close to being an equal or that I'm completely independent. No, that's just outrageous. But it's like saying the earth versus the sun. Now, is the earth going to influence the sun's motions? No, it's not. But the earth still has its own control. If we could influence the orbit of the earth a little bit if we wanted by doing various things on the earth. But the sun is always going to dictate what happens to the earth more than the earth dictating what happens to the sun. That's what it's like, I'd say, now. So no more channeling, just kind of separate but tiny and microscopic compared to the beings I'm interacting with.
So good, man. Thank you for sharing your story and bringing some clarity to where we are, where we're headed. And I think it's going to help a lot of people. I know. Where can people find more about your work? I know you have books out and you're working on more. Do you have a website? Do you have a place where people can come check out more of your stuff and all the interviews that you've been doing lately and stuff, or the last few?
Sure. Yes. My website is my name, ogiogas.com, OGIOGAS.com. And from there, you can also click on a link to buy my book, Large Gods for Small Children, where I talk about all this. Right now, it's for sale for 99 cents. So you can get the whole book. Right now, there's only the first chapter is available. I have actually written the whole thing. I just need to polish each chapter before I post them. So right now you can get all future chapters for 99 cents. Each time I post a chapter, I'm going to raise the price a little bit. So you can go to ogiogas.com to see that. Thank you.
Heck yeah. Well, thank you so much, brother. And don't be a stranger. We'll have to do it again. And
Truth, I'd love to come back. This was a great show. I had a great time. I love talking about this stuff, and I hope it helps your listeners.
Oh, for sure. I would say it already helped me, so I already know it's going to help my audience for sure. Thank you so much, brother. We have to do it again.
I had a great time. Thank you so much.
All right.